Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here, and I will show you as a souvenir quickly some slides of the past symposia. I start with the INEGEO in Paris 2002, and today it's a 20th anniversary of the INEGEO coming in France. So it's an anniversary for us. You see here the slide of I'm sorry. You see here the excursion in the middle of the symposium on the Stampian near the Étampes city, because the symposium was devoted to Alcide d'Orbigny with the stratotypes. So we organized a one-day excursion, and then we go to the southeast of France to see the Appian, the Barremian, and many other things. And after the symposium, we make a special 2 volumes of the compte rendu de l'Académie devoted entirely on d'Orbigny and our symposium. Then in 2003, we were in Dublin, Ireland, and they published a beautiful book on travel and geologists, travelers and geologists. Then we go to Florence, 2004. So this is a volume published by Geological Society of London. And then we were to Florence, visiting beautiful sites, the Monte Bolca mine with beautiful fishes. You recognize many of the participants, of course. Some have, unfortunately, disappeared since that time. And the excursion was beautifully organized. We finished in Venezia, the Academy of Venezia. You see our president here. And then we go to Prague in 2005. You recognize the late David Oldroyd, our good friend and very stone for the INEGEO organization, of course. Then we go to Lithuania, in Vilnius, 2006, with all the group photograph. And I was president at that time, and my general secretary was Ken Bork from Ohio, with always good meals in the evening, of course. You can see Hugh Torrance, David Oldroyd, and so on. Then we go to Germany, organized by Martina in Eichstätt. And here you are on the quarry where Archaeopteryx skeleton were discovered with use of the lithographic stone for printing. And the thematic of the symposium was Geology and Religion, with a beautiful book published by the Geological Society of London. Then we go to Oslo, 2008. Here we make an excursion with a boat in the fjord of Oslo, and Jacques Touré was our guide because he makes his PhD on metamorphic rocks of this country, and we have a beautiful excursion on the island and with a boat. And the excursion finished in Oslo, directly in the Oslo city. Then we went to Calgary, 2009. And we were in Alberta, visiting the Tyrrell Museum, a beautiful museum with plenty of dinosaurs. And they make an excursion, fantastic, in the Rocky Mountains with a glacier excursion with big trucks. Then Madrid, 2010, with our colleague from Madrid. We visit Rio Tinto mine, make beautiful meal, and then we go to Toyohashi in Japan. It was just 2 months after the catastrophic event of the tsunami, but we maintained the excursion and the meeting, and we met all our colleagues. Here is a hot bath for feet with hot water, the participants of the meeting, and also beautiful meal with Japanese tradition. Here we are in costumes. We went to go for the Geological Congress 2012 in Brisbane, Australia. And he organized a ceremony in the French Maison de la France in Brisbane. And you can recognize, of course, our colleagues, their wives. Then it was Manchester, 2013, and the excursion was organized by, of course, Martin Rudwick. He organized a special train for us, you see, to visit the country. And then was Asilomar, 2014, and many of you were present in Asilomar. It was in California, not far from Monterey, as you can see. And the last Geological Congress was Cape Town, 2016, and we were on the beach in Cape Town, where there are beautiful rocks on the seashore. I met Martin several times when we celebrate the bicentenary of the Geological Society of London. He organized a beautiful excursion on the island of Wight, here, Martin. And we thought to him, he is now 80 years old, of course. Maybe 90 years old. Maybe he's looking for us today. I don't know. And some friends, dear friend Michiko, in traditional Japanese costume, we thought to Taylor, in Norman University. I visited him several times. My grandson is studying in Norman University to become a pilot, so we met. I remember, of course, Ken Bork and his wife, Kay. And now I will start with the affinité elective of Georges Cuvier. So I choose this topic because since several years I discovered quite numerous archives, unknown archives, and I can give a portrait gallery of the friendship of Cuvier. The affinité elective is because Johann Wolfgang Goethe, as you know, wrote a very nice novel in 1809 called in German Die Wahlverwandtschaften, in French, les affinités électives, in English, the elective affinities. Goethe, it's a very fascinating novel, tried to explain scientifically the relationship between women and men with the explanation of chemistry. You have affinities between molecular, and they're going together to make new things. That's he tried to explain that it's a case for people, for man. So I will show quickly a gallery of people who were very near Cuvier activities and friendship. The personal life of Cuvier is not very well known. All personal archives were destroyed after his death by the family because there are too intimate archives. So it's difficult to know what he has really. But now I can give some details. The first, when he was young and student, this is Cuvier during the Goethe time and the exchange, you will see at the end of my talk, affinities between Cuvier and Goethe. Cuvier Young is this painting. I am the owner of this painting. It was recently discovered. And he went as a student because he was born in Montbéliard, in the east of France, depending at that time from the Caroline University from Württemberg. So he went to Stuttgart, and the first friend was this man, Christoph Heinrich Pfaff, a young boy, little younger than Cuvier, and they were sleeping together in the dormitory of the University Caroline. They became very good friends all their life. They exchanged numerous letters in German, and later Pfaff came to Paris to visit Cuvier again. And he has good souvenir of Cuvier. Il sait, I tell that in French, cependant, malgré la froideur apparente, le tempérament de Cuvier n'était rien moins que flegmatique. Sa vie interne est cachée était comparable à la chaleur intérieure de notre globe terrestre qui, tout enveloppé qu'elle est, pour ainsi dire, d'une croûte froide, se manifeste de temps en temps par des tremblements de terre et des éruptions volcaniques. So Cuvier could be very cold, but suddenly passionate, of course. So 6 months after his coming to Stuttgart, here, no, it's this one, he met several colleagues and a good friendship between a very important man called Kielmeyer. Kielmeyer was an anatomist. Later he became famous in Tübingen, and they became friends, and Kielmeyer learned many things, he was older, many things to Cuvier, how to dissect animals, how to make comparative anatomy. And actually, I have an American colleague, very fluent in Gothic writing, which is very difficult to read for me. He exchanged numerous letters with Cuvier in Gothic cursive, and it's very difficult to read, but they are in the Academy of Science. He will try to translate all the letters because they are very important in the life of Cuvier. And Cuvier met also this man, Georges-Frédéric Laurillard, a young man who was still in the university. They become friends, and the 3 boys at that time, Cuvier, Kielmeyer, and Laurillard, before leaving the university, engraved the tree of the university with a slogan, and they said that they were unis par l'amitié, séparés par le départ. They were existing all the life in contact. And Laurillard was preceptor before Cuvier in Normandy of a young boy, you will see it. And then he was migrating to Dorpat, to the Tartu in Estonia, where he became a famous teacher and professor, and he stayed in contact with Cuvier. And I was invited some years ago in Tartu for the celebration of Laurillard, who is very famous in this country. He became the rector of the university. He has this medal here, and Laurillard has a correspondence always with Cuvier during years and years. And Laurillard wrote one day that he wanted to come back to France because the situation was delicate. Estonia was depending of the Tsar of Russia, and he wrote one letter, incredible letter. I read the part of the letter. If you write to me, said Laurillard, ne me donnez que des nouvelles littéraires, neutral nouvelles. Remplissez l'intervalle des lignes que vous avez à me dire en réponse à la présente, et pour cette partie, servez-vous de lait roux au lieu d'encre. Sympathique writing. Je la rendrai lisible en la saupoudrant de charbon. Faites-en de même de toutes les lettres futures que vous recevrez de moi. Les précautions sont absolument nécessaires. Si ce commerce secret between Cuvier and Laurillard was discovered, vraisemblablement, s'en serait fait de mon existence civile et peut-être physique. La Sibérie deviendrait ma patrie et le Knut l'acte de mon adoption. You see, it was very difficult to live as a French in Estonia at that time. So, after that, Cuvier, before leaving the University of Stuttgart, living in Spain, was making a hiking trip with 3 colleagues, 3 students, through the Schwäbische Alb. We heard yesterday Schwäbische Alb geology, and it was a very nice trip. He wrote all the trip. This trip was unknown in the Academy of Science. I published the whole story. And arriving to the Techberg in the south of Stuttgart, they make the escalading the small hill. And the young girl called Louise Glétin, was the daughter of the bailli of the village. He, as a French gallant man, he offered his arm to Glétin to go up to the mountain. But Cuvier was a very bad hiker, and finally, Louise was pushing him at the top of the mountain, helping Cuvier to walk. And as a souvenir, Cuvier was making this painting, and he sent the original to Louise Glétin. It was one of the first affinities of a young student, 80 years old, with a young girl, of course. So you remember always this excursion. After that, Cuvier come back to Montbéliard, to Montbéliard, in the east of France. He has no job, but finally, he was succeeding Parrot, who was in Normandy, to take the same employment in the family of Déricy. Parrot was going to Estonia, and Cuvier came to Normandy in this small house and castle near Féconde, and he was teaching a young boy, Achille Déricy. This was a portrait I discovered in the descendant of La Famille Déricy for teaching this young boy. The family Déricy was living in Caen, and she was Huguenot, and Cuvier, as you know, was Lutheran. So that was the reason they were in this family. And the family was with a Comtesse Déricy, a charming woman, and Cuvier was very, very impressed by this young lady. The Comtesse was 28 years old, and the Comte Déricy was 38. He was not a very nice man, gambling in Paris, pushing the money away, and la Comtesse Déricy was in a terrible situation. But Cuvier learned German to the Comtesse, and he was under the charm of the Comtesse. He had platonic relation with this lady, but they stayed during years and years. When he sent the first volume he published on natural history with a special dedication to the Comtesse, with a special volume published in luxurious presentation. And the Normandy, when he stayed during the Revolution, and I told in the book what happened at that time, that was a paradise for Cuvier. When he has time, he will always goes back to Normandy to spend time with the Comtesse, of course, and with small people living there. There were among them the son of the Prince of Monaco, Honoré IV de Monaco. He was a young boy, and with Achille, Honoré IV, they were playing theater pieces, and Cuvier was painting the wall with the decor, and they playing a small troupe of theater. And later, Cuvier go again, later in 1801, again for holidays, and he bring with him a piece of Louis-Benoît Picard, who was presented in Odeon theaters, called The Petite Ville. And significantly, this piece of theater is a story of the visit in Provence of the young boy falling in love and meeting in this small ville a charming lady, and all the details on the theater pieces are significantly with a good relation between all these people. Cuvier later helped la Marquise Déricy to be separate from her husband. He has debt in Paris, and he was bringing money in Paris to liberate from jail the Comte Déricy. So he was very, very well helping the Comtesse Déricy. Then, from Normandy, he was called to Paris by this very interesting man, Étienne Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire, who was still in the museum working, and Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire recognized the very interesting first manuscript of Cuvier, and he asked Cuvier to come to Paris. and Cuvier arrived to Paris in 1795. He was living in the same apartment of Geoffroy. They were very, very good friends. This is nice because later they became very, very bad friends and enemies. But at the beginning, they published together. And they published on a new classification on mammifers, on mammals, and also in little later, they were receiving some elephant from Dutch country, and they make a publication on the first skeleton on the elephant. And that was before the famous publication of Cuvier alone on the elephant fossil and modern, when he described and proved that the mammoth was a fossil elephant. The paper they published together before the famous paper is very nice and interesting because Cuvier was writing the paper and he said, we are doing that, we discover that, we find that. At the end of the same paper, suddenly Cuvier said, I. So in the same manuscript, you change from will to I. That shows how Cuvier was a strong personality. And progressively, he became more and more powerful, and Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire was less and less. So they became some bad relation. So after that, in Paris, Cuvier met this very interesting man, Brongniart, who was becoming a famous geologist, and they worked together. They were also together in the Société Philomatique, and Brongniart was working with Paris, and they published together, as you know, the famous geological map of the Parisian Basin. So Alexandre Brongniart was a very nice man, and he became a very good friend of Cuvier. But Brongniart married a few years after with this young girl called Cécile Coquebert de Montbray. This is the first time you see the portrait of the Brongniart's wife. I discovered this painting in the descendant of the family. And they married, of course. What is funny is that Brongniart, before the marriage, was writing a personal diary, very intimate diary. And we discovered this diary recently, and the museum bought the whole diary, 1,000 pages, with intimate description of relationship between Cuvier, the family, even the personal sexual approach of Brongniart, with a cryptic writing, with a code. So you cannot read the pages, but fortunately for us, Brongniart gives the code in the booklet number 4. So we are able to know what happened exactly. This is another story. But Brongniart has a very nice sister, Émilie. Émilie Brongniart was a young sister of Alexandre Brongniart. And Cuvier fell in love of Émilie Brongniart. We know that because together with the private diary of Alexandre, Cécile Coquebert de Montbray was writing also a private diary, which was published privately. And you know in this private diary that she tells that Cuvier fell in love on Alexandre Brongniart. So those are very big affinities, elective affinities. And one day, Brongniart came to see Cuvier and said, my young sister Émilie was very famous, painted by the grand painter and the sculpture of the young girl she was. She was very famous as a beauty. One day, Brongniart arrived and said, my sister Émilie will be married to Mr. Pichon. We will go to Washington as commercial agent. Cuvier was devastated, nearly falling on the floor. And Cécile Colbert de Montbray tells the story. And this was a very great deception of Cuvier with this. And he was always regretting this. After that, Cuvier was in connection with many colleagues when he became famous. He became a good friend of Giovanni Fabbroni from Florence in Italy. And Fabbroni was coming in Paris during the consulat to work with a French scientist to uniformity of the metric system. He was representative of Tuscany for that. He became a friend of Cuvier all the life. And he was helping Cuvier later to give him documents from the Val d'Arno. Here you have mastodon teeth from all parts of Italy used by Cuvier in the famous book on the osman fossil. Then, and he became associate member of the Academy of Science. Cuvier was very kind with his friends. Cuvier received in Paris another man from Montbéliard, Georges-Louis Duvernois. This man was helping Cuvier to write the second part of the anatomy comparée lesson, so 3 volumes, 3, 4, and 5 volumes. Duvernois was a good anatomist, and he was very precious for Cuvier. And he explained in a notice that part of the 3 volumes were writing by him. He explained which chapter he was writing. Cuvier was just looking the writing of Duvernois to say, okay, it's good. Because Cuvier was too busy with the academy, and Duvernois was fundamental. But he never offered a position to Duvernois, and Duvernois was obliged to return to Montbéliard and then to Strasbourg. Another man very important in the life of Cuvier was Adriaan Camper from Dutch country, the son of Petrus Camper. And Adriaan Camper was coming in Paris during Daubenton time to have a lesson, and he bought for his father numerous fossils of the gypsum of Paris. And later, when Cuvier was working on fossils, he discovered that there were plenty of gypsum mandibular bones in the Dutch country. So they start correspondence, very fruitful during years and years. All the letters have never been published. I am publishing them in my biography. And it's a very fascinating period because during that time, Dutch country was invaded by French army, and the poor Adriaan Camper asked many things to Cuvier, but he sent to Cuvier many documents, drawings on Mosasaurus, on mammals, on gypsum, and so on. So was helping greatly Cuvier. And he asked to Cuvier, he was a god for Adriaan. Adriaan was considering that Cuvier was a genius, and he asked to Cuvier to send his portrait to have as a souvenir. This is the portrait made by Cuvier a little later, after the tableau of Vincent. Ça va être l'heure, ça va être terrible. The other man after is Constant Duméril, l'ami de cœur de Cuvier. He was Huguenot, and together they exchange intimate things. We are lucky to bought some years ago 15 letters of Constant Duméril, where we learn quite a lot of things. Cuvier was traveling in the south of France. He became completely depressed, and so he explained the situation to Duméril. So quickly, because I have so many things to say, this is the letters of Constant Duméril. Then the Frédéric Cuvier, the brother of Cuvier, was very important. Then Pentland, Irish man, spending time in Cuvier laboratory, helping Cuvier to translate British letters and exchanging with British colleagues. I discovered this photograph at the end of the life of Pentland, who was becoming a British diplomat. Probably he was in France as a spy. And also this man was very important, Charles Laurillard. The only drawing we have is dead. The dead man is in his bed. He was a drawer and preparator of Cuvier, very important. Another man was Alexandre von Humboldt. And I have no time to explain all the relation, but it's funny because Cuvier was rather jealous of the glory of Humboldt when he came back to South America. And he said, well, there are two ways to make natural history, to go far away, to collect on the right and the left of the hiking path for fossil or animals. The other way to make natural history is to stay in the museum in Paris, to have just around all the life, all the specimens, all the fossils, which is a jealousy of Cuvier toward Alexandre von Humboldt. Then there are men coming visiting Cuvier in the salon every Saturday evening. Stendhal, Henri Bell, I can, no time. Napoleon, he was working for Napoleon, but there were not special affinities between them. But with the fossil of gypsum, Cuvier became very famous. And he sent the volume of the Haussmann fossil to Goethe, finally, to Weimar. This is a letter. And Goethe was very happy with this expedition of the cast of the gypsum. And he sent himself fossil from the Park Hall, which is in Weimar here, where there are fossils. And we have in Paris collection fossil, quaternary fossil, sent by Goethe to Cuvier, very precious, from Monsieur Goethe de Weimar. And they're exchanging, but I just tell you that when Cuvier was sending the volume to Goethe, Goethe wrote a letter to Cuvier, but to thank him, but he sent the letter to Clémentine Cuvier, the young daughter of Cuvier, 27, who was 19 years old at that time. The letter of Goethe is beautiful, and Clémentine sent a letter to Goethe. He said, my father is very busy, but I have a great admiration for the great poet you are, and by regret, maybe you can send to me a Mephistopheles. With Mephistopheles, I can go quickly to Weimar to see you and to thank you for this gift. That were affinités électives between Goethe and Cuvier and Clémentine Cuvier. That was what I want to say very quickly. There are so many things to say. On the enemies also, on Cuvier, Blainville, Barthélemy Faujas de Saint-Fond, a geologist, a colleague in the museum. He was in rivalry, of course, with Cuvier, the paleontologist. And Cuvier called Barthélemy de Saint-Fond Faujas sans fond. That means no good. So that's precisely Cuvier in glory with a sculpture as a Roman emperor, of course. The sculpture is in Paris archives now. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very interesting and funny communication. Some question?
Yes, Claudine.
Thank you for this very interesting talk.
Mm.
You mentioned that Cuvier published with Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire the book on mammals, but I think it was Frédéric Cuvier and that was his brother and Saint-Hilaire, was it not?
No, the first, it was not a book, it was a publication in the Société Philomatique. Of course, Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire was working with Frédéric Cuvier later, describing the animals of a menagerie. Due to the Cuvier action, Frédéric Cuvier, the brother, became head of the menagerie of the museum, and they published the inventory of the specimen of the menagerie together. That's true. They published together, but not this note. This note is many years before. Yes.
Regarding the relationship of Cuvier with Napoleon, you said there was no affinity, but Napoleon was his colleague at the academy, and I think perhaps you can confirm that when he came back from the Elbe island, he came to visit Cuvier. Is that right?
Oh yes, it's
so right. Napoleon was interested in Cuvier, but Cuvier not so much in Napoleon?
No, Cuvier right? was perpetual secretary of the Academy of Science when Napoleon was elected. So they were together and they worked together, and Cuvier was employed by Napoleon to make the annual report of science and technology in France. He was obliged, I would say, to work as a citoyen of the empire. But they were not sentimental relations. They were just professional. And I describe in the volume 2 of my biography the arrival of Napoleon in the Academy of Science. And this is a funny story because Napoleon gave a lecture. He said the most wonderful battle in the life are the discovery of science, which is completely not exactly, because he made battle all his life, not for science. And Cuvier, the same day, was presenting the Leçons d'anatomie comparée as a discours, as a scientific answer to Napoleon, which is very, really excellent. But they were professional relationships, not. But Stendhal came in the salon, and the salon is a very nice place where Mérimée, Delacroix, they were coming every Saturday evening to meet not only Cuvier, but especially the girl living with Cuvier, Sophie Duvaucel, the daughter of his wife, and Clémentine Cuvier. I don't tell anything on the sentimental life of Cuvier when, if I have just a minute, he married Anne Cuvier, was the wife of Fermier Général, who was killed, guillotiné durant la Révolution, together with Lavoisier. And Cuvier met Charles Brack in Marseille. Charles Brack was head of custom, head of Boucher de Perthes. And Charles Brack has a beautiful woman, Laure Brack. And Cuvier was falling also in love of Laure Brack. And so Brack was seductrice. And Cuvier said, what I can do for you, I will make anything. And Laure Brack said, you can marry my sister. She's alone now. And Cuvier married the sister of Laure Brack to obey to Laure Brack. And Laure Brack had a son. Cuvier was busy with his son, Fortuné Brack, a seductor with all the actresses and the famous actress of that time. One day he escaped this actress, and there's a joke with Brack. You know that Brack is a race of dogs. The Brack, les Brack, as a race of Brack. And the newspaper tell, we have lost a Brack. Please, if you found it, bring it to this mistress. That is a story for Laure's son. Sorry, I have to stop.
Thank you very much. There is another question.
Yeah, it's a very short one. Thank you so much, Philippe, for your travel through these documents and images. I only want to ask a very brief question regarding the language skills, because I'm thinking about Dorpat, Tartu, Dorpat today. It was a university where German was. Yeah. It was taught in German.
It was Courland.
So, yes, and there's also a person, Bayer, who is very important in biology, cell biology.
Yeah.
So is there any connection? And the other question would be, what about this language skills? Was it because I think he could speak French there as well, because everybody was in North Germany and Austria was linked to France culture, and it was normally that you learn also French if you are educated, trained. So yeah.
No, but this at that time the country was speaking German. You're right. So Dorpat was from Montpellier. He was fluent in German, so it was not a problem for him. He was writing in French, of course. And there is, I can tell you, huge biography of Haro, published by our colleagues of Dorpat, of Tartu. And it's a beautiful volume, but unfortunately in Estonian, so it's difficult, but it celebrates the history. It's a very great anatomist of this country.